Welcome back, y'all. Y'all missed me from the last session. I'm so happy to be here again for another amazing conversation, y'all. So thanks for joining us as we're about to wrap this on home and we give summit on our final day. So thank y'all for joining us. This session, Fund the Grassroots, trust-based practices that affirm community-based organizations, falls up under our treasure bucket, y'all, of the 5 T's. And so we're going to have an amazing conversation today. As a reminder, closed captioning, y'all, we're all about accessibility is available. So make sure you enable it at the bottom of your Zoom screen if you need to. If you've been living under a rock, the We Give Summit rock, my name is Taisha Ty Wilson, she, her pronouns. I'm based in Dallas. I'm an activist, philanthropist, and also have the pleasure of serving as the Senior Director of Community here at Philanthropy Together. And me and my team, we've been doing this work since 2020, where we're trying to scale and strengthen collective giving practices with amazing programs like We Give Summit. So today, I have had the pleasure of handpicking the amazing panelists that will be a part of this conversation. Just like I mentioned at the last session, y'all, that was about strengthening democracy. This is also a conversation that I am personally passionate about. To know me is to know my heart and work really resides where the people reside on the ground. By way of my giving circle, I should mention that I'm a chair of the first Black giving circle established in Texas, called Heritage Giving Fund, and we solely support Black women-led grassroots community-based organizations that serve women and girls in North Texas. And so just like these dynamic speakers and panelists that you all will hear from today, we practice trust-based philanthropic practices, and we're going to have a great conversation around supporting and how we within our groups can better fund local community-based organizations. So I will say this though, this very much well could be like a 2-hour conversation, but I'm not going to do y'all like that. We're not going to do y'all like that unless y'all want to stay here for 2 hours, but we can't. So we're going to try our best to, y'all engage with us in the chat. But if I can't get to the questions in the chat, I have my own questions that I'm going to pose to the panelists. But I'll try my best to kind of bridge what y'all are saying in the chat. And don't forget to just stay to the end. We have to show some love to these panelists. I need y'all to give us some feedback. So please stay the whole time if you can, so you can answer this 2-question poll. All right, all that is out the way. All right, panelists, so I am super excited to announce and introduce 3 trailblazing leaders in collective giving who are working across the American South and Southeast, where new approaches to giving and collaboration among Black and Brown and women-led organizations are completely disrupting mainstream philanthropy and creating tangible local change. So Aaron Rogers is the co-director of the Hive Fund, y'all, structurally, so we can differentiate between the 3. The Hive Fund is a collaborative fund, okay? And then next up, we have the amazing, pretty in pink, Sierra Coleman. She is the founder of Go Girl Giving. They are a giving circle based in one of my favorite cities in the world, New Orleans. And she is the program officer on U.S. economic opportunity at the Rockefeller Foundation. Woo, we see you, Sierra. And then Christy Slater, the VP, the all caps VP of programs at the Women's Foundation of the South. The Women's Foundation of the South, y'all, is a public foundation. Y'all got to get to know them. They are a public foundation that are leading and working for women and girls of color in the Southern United States. So I feel like they just a whole anomaly and a league of their own. So thank you, Christy, for the work you and Carmen are doing there. And so y'all, I'm not going to read bios and all that. We just need to jump into the conversation, okay? Well, y'all good with that? I see y'all in the chat. Okay, great. All right, Christy, since I went to you, since I brought you on last, let's start with you. I want you to introduce yourself and then let's level set. Help us to level set. Because as our keynote, Dan, he mentioned earlier, there's a lot of terms around a lot of things in philanthropy. And so I don't want to make any assumptions around community-based organizations and what that definition is. So introduce yourself, and why don't you tell us what is the definition of community-based organizations and how they differ from traditional, like other nonprofits.
Thank you for inviting me today. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Christy Slater. As Ty mentioned, I'm the Vice President of Programs for Women's Foundation of the South. I have 2 seconds. I have a unique blend of government, nonprofit, and philanthropic experience. I've been in the field of philanthropy for 20 years, working at statewide, national, and now regional levels, with this most recent role with Women's Foundation of the South, which is the only public charity that is focused on building the health, wealth, and power of women and girls of color across the American South. So enough about me. Let's get into this definition. So I'll give the actual definition, which was in the session description, but we'll go over it and then I will add my own 2 cents to it. So community-based organizations, CBOs for short, are defined as service organizations that work at the local level to provide services to communities and specific target audiences, which improve a community's health and well-being. Most CBOs are small grassroots organizations and have limited resources, which makes funding and collaboration vital to support these organizations and their mission within their communities. So that's the official definition. What I would add to it is bold, underline, italics on community. And these organizations are often created, their founders are trying to solve a problem that they've had themselves. It's a need that they have that they needed to be met and could not find resources or did not have the access to resources to help them solve their own challenge. And so they created something so that other folks do not have to experience the same hardships that they've had. I would also say that these organizations are the trusted partners in community, and they are most proximate to the challenges, which means they're also most proximate to the solutions. Now, I could talk about this all day. So I don't know like how much.
No, like I already know, Christy. I already know. That's why I said that. I told y'all it could be very well a 2-hour conversation. And that was perfect, Christy.
Okay.
By definition, but we got to make it real for those like you who are on the ground. So that's why I appreciate that level setting. Okay, Erin, so let's go to you real quick. Please introduce yourself, sister, and then why don't you share with us? We're talking about trust today. We're going to talk about trust. So why don't you share why trust and trust-based philanthropic practices are important in funding community-based organizations?
Yes. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm very, very excited to get into this with you all. Such important topics. I'm Erin Rogers. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a co-director of the Hive Fund for Climate and Gender Justice with my co-director, Melanie Allen. I'm originally from Texas. I spent most of my life working for nonprofits. Yeah. And Melanie is based in Durham, North Carolina. We've got 9 staff people at the Hive Fund based throughout the US South. And we started this collaborative fund about 5 years ago because we wanted to focus at the intersection of climate, race, and gender justice. And we honed in on the US South because it's where the clean energy revolution is happening. It's where oil and gas pollution is happening. And it's where these leaderful movements for climate justice at the local level are happening, often led by incredible MVPs of social change, women of color, leaders who are not trusted oftentimes by big philanthropy and are not getting the resources that they need and deserve. And therefore, we are not getting the impact that we all want. And so we wanted to really disrupt that and change that. And I think that, you know, we use a trust-based and participatory approach in our work, in our grant making. It's a core value. It's a moral imperative, but I will say that, like, more important than that, it is a strategic imperative. It is a mission critical approach to the work that leads to impact. And, you know, I've often seen funders come in with a very top-down approach, saying, you know, I've got this idea for, I want to do this policy campaign, or I want to do this, you know, project, and I want to fund you to do it the way I think it should be done. And when that happens, not only can you, you're leaving a lot of impact on the table, you can also cause harm by, you know, forcing groups to drift away from what they know is right and what they know works. And I think when you actually open up a space where you have trust in the leadership and expertise of the community-based groups that you are working with and supporting and in partnership with, you open up so much possibility. And if we fund in ways that are long-term and flexible, ways that of funding that indicate trust, you open up possibilities for those organizations to move in the ways they know are effective, tap into existing social capital they have, elevate community priorities that they have, implement strategic, sophisticated vision that they have, elevate powerful spokespeople and storytellers that wouldn't have fit in to a more top-down approach. And you're opening up space to share this bidirectional information flow between funders and grantee partners that just makes the whole thing more robust. So I also could talk about this for hours, but I will try to cut myself off here and turn it over to Sierra.
Erin, I saw you being real nice on that. What if we don't trust them, then we can do harm. Yeah, no. Thank you for saying that. And also lifting up pulling out those very specific things that are missed when we don't trust community-based organizations. This is recorded, so y'all run that back when y'all watch this again. All right, Sierra. So you in New Orleans. I just definitely want you to introduce yourself because I love Go Girl Giving. But I want you to share what's at stake, kind of like what kind of Erin set the tone for us right there, actually. What's at stake when we don't trust and affirm community-based organizations?
Yeah, thank you all. It's such an honor and a pleasure to be here with you all today. As Ty mentioned, I'm Sierra CC Coleman, the founder of Go Girl Giving. Go Girl Giving is a community-based philanthropic fund that uses a giving circle model to mobilize resources specifically for Black women-led nonprofits. We are a collective of 22 dynamic women, and we aim to shift power by positioning Black women as benefactors, not just beneficiaries. We are challenging the norms of traditional institutional philanthropy through our collective giving model, and we are also creating new narratives around what it means to be a philanthropist. Like Christy, I'm also a career grant maker and have spent 12 years working in institutional philanthropy. I'm currently, as mentioned, the program officer at the Rockefeller Foundation. And so I do come to this work with a kind of as a both and practitioner, having worked inside of the Ivory Tower, as well as building community and driving impact outside of it. So when we affirm community-based organizations, to me, that looks like adequately and abundantly resourcing them. It's helping them to build infrastructure and capacity. It's amplifying and acknowledging their work. And so we are creating an atmosphere and an environment for them to win. Often community-based organizations, grassroots level organizations are the same orgs that are responsible for educating and enriching our children after school. They are providing critical direct services and support for those in need. They create spaces for belonging and community. They are representing our voices and best interests in rooms that sometimes we are not in, whether that's at the state capitol or city council meeting, right? Advocating on behalf of our needs and priorities. So at this moment where we're seeing funding being retrenched, commitments never realized and strategy shifting, community-based organizations are standing in the gap. So what is at stake is that the social fabric of what makes community, right? All of those things that I mentioned, it is at stake of being lost. A loss of critical and vital services that these organizations are often providing, the exacerbation of inequities and disparities, and honestly missed opportunities for innovation, imagination being robbed, and brilliance being disrupted. And so what is at stake when we do fund? The opposite of all of that. Black women in particular, we have a really great way of doing more with less. So just imagine if we were abundantly resourced, right? I think we would see dramatic shifts in our society. I think we'll see a lot more innovation. You'll see community joy. You'll see ideas not dying on the vine, but actually being realized. And so there's a lot at stake at this moment, but hopefully we can be on the right side of history as we move forward.
Beautifully said, Sierra. And, I'm glad you even mentioned up, how like funding is kind of, people are pulling back quietly, pulling back funding. And so with that, shout out, we see you, Tony, with Fidelity Catalyst Fund. Thank you for funding this work, like Giving Circles, like Go Girl Giving. We see you, and we need more funders like the Fidelity Catalyst Fund to support and strengthen our work and look at us as intermediaries that are closest to community-based organizations. So I thank you, because a lot of people, we see the money, we're like, okay, $499 billion is being moved, but it's not like decline, giving has actually declined in terms of money being flowed out. So we need more. So thank you for that. Okay, y'all. So let's make this, thank you for the level setting. Let's make y'all are trailblazing with kind of new ways and approaches of how y'all are doing affirming community-based organizations, leaning into trust. I want y'all to bring it in, make it make sense for the people within your organization of how that is living out loud. So in this moment, in this space right now, how are y'all working to bridge these inequities? And when we say inequities, of all the $499 billion that was allocated out, 8% went to communities of color. Less than 2% went to women and girl organizations that serve women and girls. Less than I think it's not even 0.5% or something like that that goes to support LGBTQ plus organizations. Inequities, y'all read about it. But I want y'all to share how y'all are bridging these inequities in funding. And please share just any of those affirming trust-based approaches and what y'all are doing in your respective organizations. And y'all can pick who goes first on that.
I can jump in because I want to build off some of the stats that you mentioned, Ty. So obviously we know there's power in collective giving. We are in some unprecedented times where many of our values are under attack, as we all know, the affirmative action case, DEI, et cetera. And so we need to collectively organize and mobilize our dollars. One of the things that I often cite about Go Girl Giving is that we saw the problem, we became the solution. Our specific problem was that women and girls, as you just mentioned, represent less than 2% of that philanthropic support. But when you start to layer on intersectional identities like place, the South, like race, specifically Black women and girls, we're at less than 1% of funding. So at Go Girl Giving, our collective has really become a source of not only empowerment, but a source of power. We've supported 35 organizations to date, have moved over nearly $70,000 to Black women and girls across New Orleans. And we do that through a combination of both nomination and applications. So when we nominate you, that's really rooted in the spirit that as residents and folks who either live and or love New Orleans, we see who's doing the work. You just get the check at the door, no questions asked. When it's through application, we are ensuring that the application is short, is easy, and we're using asset framing questions. We want to know what achievements to date are you most proud of? We want to know how can Go Girl Giving help fill the gap? We don't want to hear the problem. We know what the problems are, right? We want to hear how you are working to actually address some of the issues that are happening. And so what does that look like in real time for us? I recently met with an ED of an organization that we were able to invest $1,500 to, and that $1,500 provided school supplies for 15 youth. The Thurman Perry Foundation, we were able to give them $1,000, and that went towards a scholarship for justice impacted women. Recently, last March, we gave a $5,000 grant to Blooming Phoenix, which is an organization focused on healing for Black women and girls through arts. And they helped, that $5,000 helped to create a workshop throughout the month of March for Women's History Month for 7 girls between the ages of 11 and 17 who received deep, intensive mentorship, professional development, and public speaking support. So we have evidence that our gifts actually reach the ground. They directly impact women and girls. Our gifts are love offerings, and they're evidence that we believe in the transformational power that our organization, the grassroots organizations and community-based organizations hold.
And Sierra, these grants, I'm glad that you shared out the dollar amount, and I'll let you, Aaron and Chrissy, comment also, because sometimes I cringe when people say the word micro grants. for community-based organization, ain't nothing micro about any level of funding that's flowed to them. And so when we're dropping numbers like $1,000 and $5,000, big philanthropy might look, oh, that's cute, or, it's a micro amount, but for these community-based organizations with smaller budgets, they go a longer way. And so thank you for just naming the amounts, because sometimes we get shy around that. We're like, oh, we gave out grants, and it's like, no, name out the amounts, because they really, as it relates to the organizations, our grantee partners, they make a hell of a difference. So Erin, Christy, what say you? What are y'all doing over there at the High Fund and Women's Foundation?
Yeah. Well, yeah, all the stats that you rattled off, Taisha, that we're seeing that in the climate giving space, in spades. It's we saw a few years ago a lot of the big climate funders make these big racial justice commitments to shift their funding. And that, might have moved the needle for a hot minute, but I think it's gotten even worse since then. We've seen this real retraction in funding for organizations not only working for climate solutions, but climate justice, righting the wrongs of inequitable fossil fuel pollution and climate impacts across the world and across the US South especially. And so we are really trying to be intentional we have about 35 funders right now. We're pooling money and re-granting it out to right now about 150 organizations across the South, 78% of whom are led by women of color and Indigenous women. We're moving about $20 million a year in grants, which is amazing and great, and a drop in the bucket relative to what is really needed and deserved. But we're excited to be able to be doing that. And we make 3-year grants, general support grants, to give people the assurity, financial certainty, and long-term support. And we renew grants. And one of the things that I love, Sierra, when you talked about asset framing, because in the beginning, when we started off, we were really focused on how can we support community-based organizations who are being doused with toxic pollution and oil and gas pollution and water pollution, air pollution, petrochemical pollution. And after we started doing some grant making and we started really listening to our grantee partners and really listening to our advisors, community-based advisors, what they were telling us were a couple of things. But one, we actually want to move through an asset frame around this work. We want to, yes, we have to protect ourselves from this pollution, but we want to be proactively creating a cleaner and more just economy, and we want to be part of that economy. We want to build the good. We shifted our grant making to really allow like a more expansive and holistic approach. And apologies if my internet is unstable, but a more holistic approach around building the power to build solutions and alternatives. And that has really shifted things. We also heard from our grantee partners, because we had this trusted participatory approach and relationship with folks, that healing justice and holistic security were really, really important components of this work that needed direct funding and dedicated funding because of the ongoing incoming trauma that groups and leaders were facing around white supremacy, misogyny, climate impacts, storms, disasters. It's just these compounding systems. And scarcity of funding also can cause conflict between groups. And so how do we really resource and support organizations and leaders to be able to manage all of that, to build the power to stop the systems causing the harm in the first place? So we have developed that body of grant making now as well.
So important in terms of like, one, I love that y'all provide 3-year grants. Can't say it enough, Erin. When I think about like some of the grantee partners that Heritage funded, like to think as an executive director for these, leaders at these organizations, imagine a relief that feels, where you can kind of push out the funding, and that helps you to really be able to better budget your programs and like have a more realistic and to demonstrate your impact.
And
So that
to have a
you're
long-term, the ability to think long-term instead of just
Exactly.
short-term thinking.
I just love it. Oh, okay, Christy, you go. I can keep talking to y'all. Like, go ahead,
Well,
Christy.
if you want, I can also tie this into the next question.
Oh yes, I see you with the weaving. Please.
I'm trying to keep it.
Okay, so let's do this then. All right.
Okay.
So the other question that I had for Christy coming up, y'all, was there's some harmful narratives around community-based organization leaders. Oh, they can't, what they're gonna do with all the money? Well, I just supposed to just release the money to them and trust them. Like just all that kind of just, they have the capacity and resources to handle that amount of money? It's just crazy narratives around community-based organizations. So please, share with us like what y'all are doing at Women's Foundation of the South, and then go ahead and weave it with how, like, unpacking what narratives need to be changed around community-based organizations.
Absolutely. So WFS was created by women of color grant makers and allies to address all of the challenges that we've been hearing. And I want to kind of make this into dollars and cents for y'all. And if you haven't seen it, you should check out the Ms. Foundation's Pocket Change Report, because it really highlights the disparities in philanthropic giving, especially for women of color led organizations, and they do it geographically by region. So for the South, we're talking about $2.36 per woman and girl of color. And if the organization is led by a Black woman, that number's often cut in half. So when I was working at the Kellogg Foundation, I used to joke all the time that, being really sarcastic with this joke, that we're trying to get to systemic change with $5, and it turns out it's $2.36, and sometimes it's $1.15. So how do you get to systemic change with $1.15? So this was the premise for why WFS was created. And we saw firsthand as grant makers the challenges, how difficult it was to get resources into the hands of organizations led by women of color. And some of the challenges going into the narrative piece was worthiness, right? You have to prove that this was a worthwhile investment. You had also, as a woman of color inside of philanthropy, you have to prove that your strategy and analysis is worthy of receiving the budget to make the investment. So let's be clear about that. The same thing's happening on the ground is the same thing that's happening inside these institutions. And so for us, because we are building this foundation, in August, we will have celebrated our 3rd anniversary. The dollars that we have to raise, the dollars that we grant out. So when the foundation launched in August of 2021, launched August 1st, August 29th, Hurricane Ida hit. We're based in New Orleans, right? So the first thing we did was to use the foundation's voice to draw attention to the leaders on the ground who were the first responders, who were the point people in community, and whose organizations need resources. And we directed other funders to give to them directly, not to give the money to WFS to pass through, to here's how you give them directly. Once we received our first regranting dollars, we said, what's the best thing we could do? And the best thing we could do with limited resources was give everybody a break. So we created a program called Woke at Rest, Women of Color at Rest, or Woke at Rest for short. And what Woke at Rest is, has 2 components. First, we invite leaders to a 2-day wellness retreat, just to literally take a break. And then we give their organizations a $5,000 grant in order to support the leadership and restoration of the leader. And they can use the dollars however they see fit, as long as it supports their leadership development and restoration. That could look like vacation, it could look like therapy, it could look like executive coaching, because the first round was in Louisiana after Hurricane Ida. For some, that meant helping to rebuild their homes. It's whatever is going to give you that boost, whatever it is, you know best what you need. So these resources are to support the leader. What we saw with that is that like, a lot of folks were like, why, why rest? What we saw was that once these leaders made the investment in themselves, 4 things happened. First, it was permission to take a break, then be pampered. And that then shifted their perspective. And it also changed practices within their organizations. We saw more leaderful organizations be developed, a lot of delegation, building up leadership within. We saw changes in how they supported their communities. We saw changes in how they supported their staff. And so it's had, that one investment has had a ripple effect, not just in strengthening the leadership and sustainability of the leader, but their organizations as well and into community. Now, what does this also mean for narrative change? One of our approaches is to amplify the voices of women of color nonprofit leaders across the South. To date, we have invested in 4 states, so Louisiana, Mississippi, Texas, and Georgia. This year we'll be expanding into Arkansas. We've supported 95 leaders to date, and one of the components of our work in amplifying their voices was to create first an impact production series called Learn With Us, and you can find this on our website. And then to take those conversations to help, it really was like a site visit for philanthropy, for them to get a better sense of what these leaders are up against and the fact that they're still winning, even in the midst of all of these challenges. So from the first round of videos that we created in the Learn With Us series, we said this is powerful, but what would be more impactful is if folks could see the conditions and could see the places and really get to understand these leaders in a deeper way. So we developed a docu-series called As We Are. We premiered it last night in Jackson. And for those that are in Louisiana, we are premiering tomorrow, 6 to 9 p.m. Ashe Powerhouse Theater. I'll put the link to register.
Please drop that link, Christy. Everybody is going to
I will.
Oh.
And it's such a powerful series because the whole premise is to understand these leaders as they are, not as they're imagined to be. So you're understanding, get a better understanding of the work, the communities, what challenges they're facing, and the fact that while they are most, like I said in the beginning, those that are most proximate to the problems are also most proximate to the solution. So we are working very hard in order to combat these narratives at every turn, to show what expertise looks like and what leadership looks like, and starting to change the belief in who gets to be the expert, who gets to be defined as a leader. We're showing you that the leadership is all around you. It's always been there. It's in the communities that you live in.
Oh, where do I start? And I'm trying to figure out how to, like, Christy, just the woke at rest, the report, like the documentary, which all of us want to show up and support. And congratulations on y'all 3-year anniversary. You literally, and y'all in the chat, I even see in the chat, people are like, this is affirming for us and we're doing something similar. Y'all, like, rest is important. I'm a mama of 5. When I am tired and like not at capacity, my kids feel it. It's the same thing of what happens within these community-based organizations. And so I love that us collective givers, we're really leaning into investing in rest. That's so important. And thank y'all for trailblazing in that way, Christy. I love it so much. Sierra, now I'm really thinking now of like, okay, we investing in rest. We supporting these organizations, multiple year funding, we disrupting narratives around them. Okay, so like, what are the ways do you think, sis, that we can better support the leaders to better position them so that they can get ready for this abundance of money and flow that we hope, that more people will give to them? So like, what other better ways can we support the leaders outside of maybe some of the things that Christy has already and Erin has already shared?
Yeah, no, thank you for that question. And I just have to give flowers to Christy. She and I work together at the Kellogg Foundation. The Women's Foundation of the South is the host of Go Girl Giving Collective. And, it is such an honor to be in partnership with WFS. So thank you, Christy. Every time you talk, I'm learning something new, and we talk often. But how can we better support leaders? So I think as collective givers, individual givers, grant makers, wherever you sit in this space of philanthropy, I really want to encourage us to bring our full selves to this work. The theme of this conference is activating together, right? So across time, talent, treasure, testimony, and I feel like I'm missing one, the other T. There's so much more that we can kind of bring to the room in the pursuit of social change and impact. And so an example for Go Girl Giving has been through our You Go Girl Summit. This past March, we hosted our first and hopefully annual summit that convened all of our awardees, local philanthropists, leaders together for a day of connection, of learning, of networking together. But the impetus of the summit was hearing from the community-based organizations. They told us as a collective, because our main mechanism of activating together was through our treasure, right? Giving of resources. They told us that's great, but we want connection. We actually need capacity support. We want mentorship from the members of Go Girl Giving. We want community. And so we designed and curated this summit with their feedback in mind, with Black women at the center, and their needs at the center. And so I often say, I believe that when you get Black women in a room together, everything you need is in the room. Somebody has a connection, the resources are there. Again, just grounding ourselves in like abundance, that we have what we need, especially for each other and especially for our communities. And so with that premise, at least a third of our speakers and workshop facilitators were Go Girl Giving members. So we're exemplifying like what it means and what it looks like to bring our full selves to the work. This was an opportunity for members to showcase their talents, their skills as public speakers, as facilitators, as subject matter experts. And what was most beautiful for me is looking back, in a room full of Black women, hearing from Black women subject matter experts. We didn't have to bring anybody from that's not connected to this community, right? These are women who are rooted here. And so I think folks got an opportunity to see themselves in our collective, right? And so our Giving Circle is working not only, again, to provide those financial resources, but to think about how we tap into our gifts, our talents, to offer services, to serve on the board, to offer our connections, and to really be in partnership with our awardees and not have it be a transactional relationship. I think that's our secret sauce. And I think that is what has caught the attention of funders and supporters like Fidelity Charitable Catalyst Fund, the Foundation for the Mid-South, the Power Coalition for Equity and Justice, who have supported the summit and supported Go Girl Giving. And so we are really demonstrating that we're good at moving money, but using our collective strength is around building the capacity and infrastructure in a culturally competent way that is rooted in love for our growing community of awardees. And so everything that we have is in the circle, it's in the room, and we are willing and positioning ourselves to give all that we can to our awardees and community.
I saw your summit, Sierra, and I wish I could have just flown on over from Dallas to support y'all and just be in the room to cheer you and your grantee partners on. Congratulations on a very successful summit. You just pulled out two things. I was trying to write them down. You just gave some gems and free game to all of us as collective givers on how Go Girl was attracting other funders to support y'all work. And that was really on, it was because of those things that y'all were investing in and doing that got the attention to other funders. So I hope y'all, all the other giving circles, collective giving groups, y'all were paying attention to that. Because as we're trying to amplify our impact outside of our member contributions, we got to demonstrate this impact. That sends a signal to other funders that, they're doing this work and they will flow the funding. And then I love that you were talking about your grantee partners were like, well, appreciate the dollar, but also we need this. And so I think, that is important to ask, y'all. We got to ask our grantee partners. I don't know, give them a menu. That's a trust-based philanthropic practice, is to ask them, what else you need other than that? And it's a beautiful way, like what you said, Sierra, of how we can then, people are talking about what other ways and how we can engage our members and such. That doubles, that beyond the dollar piece doubles as member engagement, y'all. So if we flow the funds and then we think, what else can we do for these for these grantee partners? It's an opportunity for us to leverage, to go in the collective, to pull out our talents, to pull out our ties, our connections, our testimony, advocacy, and all of that comes to life. This is so good. Okay, Erin, what time we got? Okay, we're still good. We're gonna get to this closing question, but I do want to ask you this, Erin, because it touches on Jacqueline's question real quick. I want to know, what do funders need from community-based organizations? You know, because some funders are like, well, they don't, you know, they don't have the right assets or this, or they don't have X amount of years of demonstrating their impact and all this other kind of stuff, right? But Jacqueline asked, could you all suggest some trust-based practices that you think should become more common, like should be become more common? And I think that's a good question. I'm gonna flip it though. Like what should be more common for funders, like in terms of like how we view the information we extract from or wanting to extract from them, so that we can make decisions on whether or not we want to fund them. So does that make sense? So what needs to become more common in that process?
Oh yeah, so many things.
I know.
So many things
Okay.
need
I
to
tried
change.
to bring it in.
No, I'm glad that, thanks Jacqueline for asking about this, because it would be good to hear from everybody, like what are some of the actual tangible practices and processes that we're using. And I think, you know, when it comes to what funders need, I do think that a lot of funders approach this work saying, you know, we need these metrics, we need these indicators, we need, you know, this amount of data before we can decide on whether we're funding you. And I think those are all proxies for we don't trust you and we want to control the situation. And so I think one of the things funders need from organizations is to, well, funders need to be able to earn the trust of organizations so that grantee partners and prospective grantee partners can push back on us and say, actually, here's how we define success. Here's our goals. Here's, you know, what we want to accomplish. How can you help us do that? And I think when we start to open up that space for community-based organizations and grassroots organizations to share that information and share about what is working, what are the real challenges, what does have traction in our work, that's when when things get really, really rich. And I'll give you an example that I was thinking of when Christy was talking about, you know, when hurricanes hit and groups go into disaster response mode. We were lucky enough to meet the leader of an organization in Lake Charles, Louisiana. Her name's Roshetta Ozane, and she had gotten into community-based organizing through a lot of disaster response work in Lake Charles, and had been doing mutual aid work and work around racial justice and poverty. And she was just like building these incredible community connections, and also noticing that folks in her community were like suffering health-wise, including her own kids were suffering some really bad skin diseases, skin rashes, and asthma and other illnesses because of the high levels of pollution from oil and gas and petrochemical facilities in Lake Charles. And, you know, we started to talk to her about, is working on that pollution something that your organization, the Vessel Project, would want to do? And she trusted us enough to push back and say, you know, my approach is mutual aid first. Like, I meet my community needs, and our community needs to have their first order needs met. And then we can think about what to do about, you know, building the power we need to take on these mammoth oil and gas industries that that will, come after us, and that, that is a very hard thing and courageous thing for us to do. But I want to take, I want you to fund me for my approach, for putting mutual aid first. And we did. And thank God, like she told us that. Thank God we listened. And I just want to say that Rashida has become one of the most important and impactful climate justice leaders in the world right now. Like she has built connections in Europe, all across the South, nationally, and has led others in a movement with a much different approach around these issues, and accomplished recently one of the biggest climate victories ever on record. Collectively, Rashida's group and many others recently convinced the Biden administration to stop permitting new oil and gas new gas export terminals in Lake Charles and across the Gulf South.
Wow.
They have prevented right now the equivalent of 400 coal plants worth of climate pollution. That is huge. That's more than double the total coal plants in the United States right now. So, and I don't think a lot of people have heard about this, but it was the direct result of community of color led groups doing this work the ways that they knew worked best. And so, yeah, as I started off saying, listening, trusting, and following is what gets the goods.
Whew, Erin, I love that. Can you drop the, probably Melissa, she flowing with me in the chat. She flowing with us in the chat. Thank you for that call out. We need to know about those real those wins, those collective giving wins. It helps all of us to tell the collective story about our impact, we made it to our final question, which is great. I'm so proud of us. Y'all, this is wonderful. I did have a very, very quick yes or no question because somebody asked, do y'all fund outside of your respective states? Just yes or no. No to you, Sierra, no, Aaron, no, Christy. So they loyal to the soil to the South, y'all, but you can check out their website so you can see what are their priority, their funding areas or whatnot in the South, okay? Closing question. Y'all are amazing, by the way. This is such a rich conversation, and I hope y'all see all the love and the spark, the many other ongoing conversations and people validating y'all work in the chat. So where do we go from here? We about to all go back to our spaces. Y'all about to go to New Orleans, and like we're about to go home. Everybody gonna leave from We Give Summit. Where do we go from here? So give us one quick, tangible call to action, y'all, that you have for everyone as it relates to what we've been talking about, funding community-based organizations. Let's start with you, Sierra. I feel it. Feel like it's already on your mind, on your heart. Go ahead, say it, girl. I see it. I feel it.
I mean, I think it's simple for me. If we want an inclusive, equitable, thriving community, society, like community-based organizations, grassroots organizations have to be a part of that equation. And as givers, and as philanthropists, like we have to put our money where our mouth is. And so my call to action is give. And that may be your financial resources, your time, whatever that may be, whatever that looks like for you. Don't have like decision-making paralysis around, oh, my gift is too small. There is no gift too small, no gift too large. And so my call to action is for folks to just activate, to move, to put their money where their mouth is. If you don't know a community-based organization, give to a giving circle. We will make sure your money lands in good hands.
Period. Including heritage. Yes, period. I second that. Sierra. Christy, what about you? What's your final thoughts, sis?
I have so
I know.
I know. I'm trying to reel myself in. In this moment, I would say we are the ones we've been waiting for. The cavalry is not coming. We are it. As we look at institutional philanthropy, who made all of these pledges and said all of these things just a few short years ago, and we haven't seen those dollars materialize yet. And now there's a Supreme Court decision that allows them to not do what they said they were going to do and never did in the first place. That it's the individual givers that are going to make the difference in all of the communities that we care about, in all of the issue areas that we care about. And I would also say, as we think, talking about community-based organizations, I can't stress enough that lived experience makes you an expert. And so when you are thinking about the value, the worth of these organizations, it's the lived experience that makes you the expert. And that's another component of trust-based philanthropy is, you know what you're talking about. You created an entire organization based on the struggle that you have gone through personally, and you are trying to improve this system, this issue, practice, whatever, so that others do not have to suffer in the same way. So it's those two things. It's trust lived experience in your trust-based philanthropy practice, and understand that we are the ones we've been waiting for.
Ain't no cavalry coming to save us. We are the cavalry.
We
That's a whole word, Christy. I need that in short form. Somebody got to make it for me. No, that's absolutely facts across the board. With you, Sierra, with Giving, we are our lived experiences. I want y'all to really know that our lived experiences matter, y'all. That makes you a subject matter. Don't ever let nobody tell you that your lived experiences don't matter. Okay, you are a subject matter expert when you know what it's like to be broke, when you know what it's like to live in poverty, when you know what it's like to write for grant applications and get denied. You have the live. Ugh. Erin, what's your final word? This.
Yeah, I don't know how I can top those, but I'll add a few final thoughts. Well, first of all, yes, put your money where your mouth is, but I'm going to go ahead and say, even more importantly, put your money where the South is.
Hey.
And also, I think the issues that we are working on are so complex. They're long-term systems change problems. So fund the collaboratives, fund the giving circles, the collaborative giving, because that's what's going to help foster collective action. There's no one or person that can do this alone. I've helped foster collaboration amongst the groups that we're able to support. So collective action is what I would call for.
Y'all got my soul fired up. I'm so for real. Shout out to me. I gotta give myself my flowers. I thought of y'all, each of you, for this conversation today. So thank you, Lord, for the fact it just validates. Listen to that chat. So all right, I gotta wrap this up. Otherwise my production team will be like, let's go. We have a final closing session, y'all. But first I have 2 call to actions real quick. One, save the chat. It's some connections going on up in here. I see all this love and space and energy, y'all. Y'all need to, if you need to run back the chat once y'all pull out of this conversation to just validate yourself. You wasn't crazy when you was thinking about some of the things you were thinking. Hopefully this conversation validated y'all in that way, that we're in this together. And the panelists did an amazing job dropping those gems. I want y'all to go back and watch the recording once it's up. Sometimes conversations like this, that we get inspired and we get all fired up, but we need to sit with it. It's been some good stuff, tangible things that we can place and practice and replicate. We don't have to start from scratch, y'all. Y'all heard it from the mouths of experts that's doing the work. So let's copycat on that. It's not plagiarism if it's, you know what I'm saying? If it's really effective, it's working. Let's run it up in that way in our organizations. And then the last thing is, I want you to follow them. I want y'all to literally right now take out y'all phones and go follow Go Girl Giving. Go follow Women's Foundation of the South. Go follow High Fund on all the platforms and all the ways. Go tell the world. Go use y'all voice and tell everybody what you learned and how hype you are about the work that this organization was and how this session was. When we share the recording, y'all share it with your networks. And again, Tony, if you're still here, brother, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Go get your other people and tell them to come keep funding the High Fund and Heritage and speaking that to existence for my circle, and Go Girl Giving and Women's Foundation of the South. We need more Fidelity Catalyst funders, Tony Bowen-ishes folks out here to fund our work. And all right, so let me wrap it up. I love y'all. Thank you so much for Aaron. I have fun. Congratulations on y'all success. Christy, what you and Carmen is building is something amazing. It fills a gap, sister. And I love y'all for that. And Sierra, like you and Go Girl Givings, y'all remind me so much of just like heritage. And I just admire the work y'all doing. Have a lot of admiration and respect for you all and for our audience.